Hey Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, while the world focuses relentlessly on the new COVID variant, rising gas prices, and Biden not wearing a mask in Nantucket, something else is happening that would otherwise be getting front page coverage. The trial of Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. The names and strange connections to this case continue to pile up, and I'll reveal the latest coincidental connection and big name attached at the end. You'll have to wait for it. But first, let's go over a primer of the trial that will be taking place over the next, what they estimate to be 6 weeks. The trial begins today in Manhattan. Maxwell faces 6 charges directly related to sex trafficking and exploitation of underage girls. If convicted of all 6, she faces up to 70 years in prison. She also faces 2 counts of perjury, but those charges will be addressed in a separate trial that's yet to be set. So let's go over the 6 charges she faces in court today. Count 1. Conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts. Count 2, enticement of a minor to travel to engage in illegal sex acts. Count 3, conspiracy to transport minors with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. Count 4, transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. Count 5, sex trafficking conspiracy. Count 6, sex trafficking of a minor. I would say those charges are not good for Ghislaine Maxwell, but these charges do span over a 10-year period of time between 1994 and 2004 and involve 4 different victims, though we know there were likely many, many more. This particular court case only involves these 4. The indictment states that Ghislaine assisted, facilitated, and contributed to Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of minor girls by, among other things, helping Epstein to recruit, groom, and ultimately abuse victims known to Maxwell and Epstein to be under the age of 18. Basically, what the prosecution will be presenting is evidence that Ghislaine prepared these minor girls, some as young as 14, to engage in sex acts with Epstein. The young girls were enticed and recruited by Ghislaine and eventually would be groomed by Ghislaine to engage in paid sex acts that were labeled as massages. One victim accuses actually Ghislaine herself of participating in group sex with Epstein and the victim. These events would take place all over the country in Epstein's various residences, including Palm Beach, New Mexico, Manhattan, and even in Ghislaine's residence in London. Now, the victims, who are all now adults, will not be named in court. They will instead be allowed to use pseudonyms or their first names only. And this takes us to the topic of names. With so many powerful people connected to Jeffrey Epstein, which big names are we likely to hear in court? Well, probably no one's. That's right. We're likely to hear 0 powerful names dropped or implicated in this trial. Now, why is that? Because of the victims who have publicly dropped names, the prosecution left them out. There are no charges against Maxwell that involve any of the more well-known victims. For example, Virginia Giuffre, the most well-known of Epstein's victims, is not included in this trial. Giuffre is the one who claims she was trafficked to Prince Andrew. She also claims she was trafficked to New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former U.S. Senator George Mitchell, lawyer Alan Dershowitz, modeling scout Jean-Luc Brunel, and billionaire Glenn Dubin. Now, why is she not included in the trial? Well, it's unclear. She says Ghislaine Maxwell was heavily involved in her exploitation, but for whatever unknown reason, the prosecution didn't bring up any charges related to Giuffre's case. Another victim who appears to be absent from the trial is Sarah Ransom. Ransom accused Epstein of raping her and accused both Epstein and Maxwell of recruiting her into their sex trafficking ring and lending her out to their friends, including Alan Dershowitz. Most importantly, Ransom was primarily stationed on Epstein's island in the Caribbean and would have seen and possibly interacted with the various influential people being flown on and off the island on Epstein's private jet. People such as Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, perhaps. In an interview with CBS News, Ransom stated, Ghislaine was Jeffrey's right hand, the lieutenant of the whole pyramid. She made sure we all stayed in line, that when we were called to his bedroom, that we went. However, in 2018, Ransom settled a case with Epstein and Maxwell, so it's not looking like she's included in the trial. Now, this takes us to a big name attached to the case that we'll be hearing a lot of during this trial, and that's Comey. Not James Comey, but his daughter Maureen. Maureen Comey is one of the 3 lead prosecutors in this Maxwell case. Maureen was also a lead prosecutor in the Jeffrey Epstein case before he allegedly killed himself over 2 years ago. She also worked on another Epstein-related case, that of Nicholas Tartaglione. Tartaglione, a former cop and quadruple murderer, was assigned a cell with Epstein and claims that he tried to help Epstein after he was found unconscious with marks on his neck, allegedly attempting suicide. But Epstein's attorney said he didn't attempt suicide, that it was Tartaglione who roughed him up. Later, Epstein was placed on suicide watch, and we all know how well that went. Now, if Tartaglione sounds familiar to you, it's probably because Ryan pointed out last week that Tartaglione's defense attorney is the same one now representing Ghislaine Maxwell. So Tartaglione, who was accused by Epstein of roughing him up, has the same defense attorney as Maxwell, who's being prosecuted by the same prosecutor who went after both Epstein and Tartaglione. If that doesn't confuse you enough already. One thing that I really want to bring up on this is that, in a district attorney's office, there are typically, especially one with the Southern District of New York, you're probably looking at hundreds of prosecutors, and they usually are assigned a variety of different types of cases. So a prosecutor would work in a division such as grand theft, or work in homicide, or work in sex crimes. So for this particular prosecutor, Comey, to have worked on Tartaglione's case, which is a quadruple homicide facing death penalty, and also now working on sex crimes of Epstein and Maxwell, it is a little bit, it's like, you couldn't find someone else out of the hundreds possibly prosecutors that you may have in the office. So there's we're seeing a lot of just connections with this case that are, making people kind of our heads spin. And of course, with this case beginning today, no one is allowed in the court. We're not going to see any press coming from it. People are camped outside the court waiting for any updates, but that's all we're going to get. So, just this kind of adds more layers to it. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this?
It also speaks to our fraudulent meritocracy, that the children of the elites getting all of these different advantages and then believing that they're getting them through their own merit. One thing that the Tartaglione case and the Maxwell case and the Epstein case have in common is that they're all getting covered in the news. Now, the Tartaglione case was a bigger deal in New York than it's not a global case like Epstein and Maxwell, but it was a big deal. This is an ex-cop, with a quadruple homicide. That's the kind of thing that the New York Post and New York Daily News are gonna go wild with, throughout the course of the entire thing. So the way you rise through the ranks of prosecutor is by getting these high-profile cases. Every prosecutor wants these cases for that particular reason, so that Comey's daughter gets Epstein, Maxwell, and Tartaglione. Suggests that either she's the greatest prosecutor that they have in there, or there's politics going on that is enabling, the daughter of Comey to be given these, particularly plum assignments.
Or this just adds more layers to
and it does
what
that
already,
too. And it does that too, because it keeps it all centralized within this ring of extremely powerful people.
Right. And there's just a lot of conspiracy theories already around this case. And it's like, why add to it? Why couldn't you just find other people to handle this?
They should, but they could find someone else named like Clinton or something, or an unrelated Clinton. We swear. Would anyone believe that? Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah. So we'll see how this plays out. But of course, the prosecution, the defense team is saying, Maxwell is just being dragged through all of this because she's the only person that they can get because Epstein's dead. But she was heavily involved in this.
I guess they're not going to get Dershowitz for the defense either. but so he's not that accuser you just explained is not going to actually be part of the case, right?
That's what it's looking. It's looking at this point like the accusers that have actually dropped names. None of them are involved in this case, and it's not just that they aren't testifying. There weren't any charges brought up that were pertinent to their accusations. So again, that raises more questions. Like, why was it that it was just these 4 victims? Why did they not include these other victims who've come out in the spotlight? There were at least 3 other victims that are not included in this. So, why is that? Why did the prosecution?
Do you think it could be the benign explanation, right, is that prosecutors did not find their claims credible, or did not think there was enough evidence, or there was some reason for them to not trust everything those accusers were saying, and so then not want to go in that direction, or they thought it would just be more or they're making political considerations like this will be more difficult or more fraught for some reason. So, but we'll probably never know that.
Right, but then it goes to Kim's point that if you have one of the prosecutors is a daughter of James Comey,
right.
then she's in that social circle.
Yes.
Who would want to protect people in the social circle. I mean, that is certainly what you could plausibly deduce from that.
Yeah, this nepotism is not good. It's not good.
Well, it depends on who. It's good.
It's good. It's good for the nepot. That's not a word. Just made that up. Anyway, thank you, Kim. We'll have more Rising after this.